Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, we'll talk about a Will Smith potential contract extension, get into Miguel Vargas and what he will be capable of, and a look back at the 2013 Dodgers. That's what's on tap, so make sure to keep it Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. This is a daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. We can be found wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. And if you want to never miss a day, because we're not going to, make sure to subscribe, and they'll come right to your inbox or right to your notifications or your phone screen or wherever you get notifications. So make sure to do that. If this is your first time listening or watching, I'm Vince Samperio. I'm usually here with co-host Jeff Snider, but Jeff's still down for the count. So I'm here again a little bit later than normal. I apologize, but with Jeff not being able to go and us being able, moving things around, life happens. So, but we're still here for you. We're never going to miss a day. We just might be a little bit later than we normally are. So that's what we're here to bring you. Again, I have a dog here with me. So if you see him in the background, don't be on YouTube. Don't be alarmed. But the No Real Dodgers news once again. No Real Dodgers news other than Dodgers Fan Fest is February 4th. I believe Thursday you'll be able to download the free tickets and purchase any of the VIP experiences. I believe they usually have um, autograph sessions and things of that nature. So if that's something that you are want to do, then go ahead and go there. I don't know if I'll be there yet, but it's very possible that I might make my way out there. So that's it on the front of news. Not news, but Diego Cartaya was working out at Dodger Stadium with some of the guys. The Dodgers social media made sure to provide us with photos, and Cartaya continues to look like a stud, and we look forward to seeing him whenever he's playing at Dodger Stadium, not just working out at Dodger Stadium. Although that probably won't be it could potentially be this season, but if not, in 2024 for sure. So today's episode, like I said, no real news, but a couple of prompts, ideas that came off the mailbag that the Athletic had, part two of a Dodger mailbag with Fabian Ardaya. And one of the questions was, have the Dodgers engaged Will Smith on an extension? And Ardaya says, my understanding is that the Dodgers haven't to this point. Outside of Julio, Smith may be the most obvious extension candidate on the roster. And then he says he'll be diving into that more in depth soon. I'm gonna dive into that a little more in depth right here, right now, because we need some content. And the Dodgers, this is a good one. So Will Smith is not a free agent until after the 2025 season. So he still has 3 seasons under team control. He'll begin arbitration starting next season, and then he'll have his 3 years of arbitration. So he already got a little bit of a raise this year, going up to $5.2 million. You would imagine that that's only going to continue to go up. And for Will Smith, for catcher, like contemporaries are not in the position he's in, there's not necessarily anyone to compare to. There's, he has Money Grandal got a deal a few years ago, but he was a free agent. He got 4 years, 73 mil. JT Realmuto, I guess, is the closest comparison. He signed a 5-year deal for $115.5 million kicked in 2021. And when he was 29 years old. Will Smith is currently 27 years old. So if Smith signed a deal in a couple years, it would be closer to JT Realmuto. But either way, we're here to talk about Will Smith and what an extension would look like. And it's Probably not, the time to talk extension with Will Smith in terms of they still have 3 years left. It's not necessarily like, oh, we need to sign you to an extension. The Dodgers could maybe save a little bit on the front end, buying out his arbitration years, giving him guaranteed money, and then probably save themselves a little money on the back end because Will Smith it could go either way. He could become more valuable or less valuable, but he could become more valuable and salaries could rise in the next few years. And then when he's a free agent, it might be too much to afford him. So now would be a time to think about it, maybe not so much to press it too much, but what would it look like? And you're looking at Real Muto is getting 23 million a year. Yasmani Grandal making 18 point something million a year. So probably somewhere in that realm. The hard part is if the Dodgers do sign him to an extension and it is for a little bit more money, they do risk the AAV being higher than maybe you know if he, let's just say next year he goes in arbitration and he gets a jump up to 10 mil, just to say $10 million, but they sign him to an extension where he might make 10 million next year on payroll, but against the luxury tax, it's going to depend on the whole deal. And if let's just say the whole deal was 5 years, 100 million, that's 20 million. That's 20 million AAV. So instead of that 10 million counting against the luxury tax, it would be 20 million counting against the luxury tax. So this might be a reason the Dodgers don't try to extend Will Smith, just because realistically, 5 years, 100 mil seems fair right now, but it's also going to be 20 mil against the luxury tax the next couple of years when he's probably not going to be making $20 million. So, you know, knowing that the luxury tax is something the Dodgers think about, that might be it, especially considering they're not in danger of losing Will Smith, but they would be in danger of paying extra because if they're in the luxury tax this year and then they're in the luxury tax again next year, then they get, the repeater penalties, the extra taxes, blah, blah, blah. So that contract extension that I signed Will Smith to could end up costing them even more than the 100 mil, proposed 100 mil that I just mentioned because of the taxes and everything else. So that might be a reason that deters them from giving him or thinking about a contract extension. And like I said, realistically, they have 3 more years. And then, this is the Dodgers thinking may be different than, other teams thinking. Now, the Braves, we've seen lock up a lot of their young talent and to pretty team friendly deals. It seems pretty team friendly deals, at least initially, with based on what it is. But for every one of those deals, it could turn into a situation. I don't know, but Cody Bellinger, let's just say after the 2019 season, MVP season, coming off Rookie of the Year season, the Dodgers are like, oh man, this guy is our center fielder of the future. Let's lock him up. Let's extend him. Let's sign him to a 10-year, $175 million deal or whatever the case is. And Bellinger said, okay, yeah, I'll take that. Now they'd be on the hook for 100 and something mil still, and he hasn't been good for the last couple of years. And defend obviously 175 mil 10 years was 17.5 mil, which isn't a terrible figure for a guy like Bellinger who does bring you Gold Glove defense in center field, but it would have been on the hook for a lot of money for a guy that wasn't as proven. And, even with the Cunha had that nasty knee injury. And then last year, still the knee wasn't 100% there. So that's 2 years where his contract was compromised a little bit in terms of the value he brought to the team. Now, obviously, if he gets back on track and is back to, what he was pre-injury, then he's still going to be a bargain for the Braves. But, that's just the risk that teams take when signing these young players to the extension. Julio Rodriguez had a really great first year for the Mariners, Rookie of the Year, looks like a future budding superstar, one of the faces of Major League Baseball. They signed him to that long extension, but we haven't seen his second year. The sophomore slump, while it is a little bit cliche, it is there for a reason. And, guys can start figuring it out. Pitchers can start figuring you out. And it's up to you to make those adjustments. And, some people might say, well, Julio showed that he can make those adjustments because he struggled the first month or so of the season and then figured things out. And that's possible. And I love Julio Rodriguez and I hope he does pan out. But I'm just saying, like, this is some of the reasons why you wouldn't sign extensions or why you wouldn't give guys extensions right away, because you don't know. Now, has there been guys on the Dodgers that probably already deserve extensions that have shown, are beyond the point of, okay, I don't think they're going to be that good? Yeah, Walker Buehler, Julio, to name a couple. Will Smith is probably right there on that precipice of okay, I think this guy's a pretty for sure. We know what his floor is, and his ceiling can only go higher. So, real quick, taking a break right here to talk about FanDuel, because FanDuel, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. NFL playoffs are here, and we're excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On, because they're the number one sports book in America, FanDuel. If you're new to FanDuel, that's even better because they have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers can join today and get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just sign up at fanduel.com/locked on. FanDuel has all your favorite bets, from the money line to point spreads to player props. Plus, you can even combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with the same game parlay. If you follow any of the betting accounts, if you follow, Bleacher Report betting, if you want to, a lot of people are making big money with same game parlays, putting a bunch, first touchdown, over 200 yards rushing, whatever the case is. So, hey, why not put $5 down, put a big parlay together, and you also get $150 in free bets back with it. So that's all on one app that's safe and secured and super easy to use. So don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet and get $150 in free bets, win or lose, at fanduel.com/locked on. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right. Back into the Will Smith extension talk. So, with all that being said, in terms of why the Dodgers wouldn't be interested in extension at the moment, what would that extension look like? And I think 5 years, 100 mil is something to look at, but that's 3 years of arbitration and only buying out 3 years of his arbitration and getting 2 years on the back end of it. Will Smith currently 27, so that would take him to around his age 32 season, which might be a little early for them to, if they're going to lock him up, they want to lock him up. And it's one of those where, can they get him to lower the AAV, more years, but a little bit more money, like a 7-year deal, $125 million, and now you're looking at, a little bit smaller AAV than before, but he's getting $125 million guaranteed. He gets to stick with the Dodgers. They buy out his arbitration years, that kind of stuff. That could be something they're interested in. The other part of this is, Diego Cartaya, top Dodgers prospect, is on the way. Jesus Galiz, who they signed, should theoretically be on the way in a little bit after that. And it's a matter of, the Dodgers haven't been able to really lock down and have any extension candidates, at least not long-term extension candidates, with some of these young players. And I wonder if that's a product of the system. Like, we believe our system's always going to consistently turn out, major league caliber prospects, and we don't feel the need to tie down to any specific one of them if we don't have to, or if we don't get the deal we want, because there'll be another one that comes up in the next couple of years. And that's possible, although you can look at shortstop real quick, and obviously we don't know how Gavin Lux is going to perform if he is an everyday shortstop and everything else. But Corey Seager was that guy, came up, was the top tier shortstop. The Dodgers didn't end up paying him. He leaves to another team. They didn't have anyone backing him up in terms of a prospect. They had Trey Turner backing him up for that 1 year because they made that trade, but they didn't have anyone in the system ready to back him up. Gavin Lux was supposed to be that guy. He had a little bit more of a delayed start to his career in terms of being productive. And that happens. But so, that's one example right there where they had homegrown talent, they didn't lock him up, and then he ends up leaving, and they didn't really have anybody behind him that was in the farm system. So, they had to trade others in the farm system to acquire who was his backup, or who took over the next year. They dealt from some other strengths, which was one of them catcher being Kiba Ruiz and Josiah Gray, in order to get, Scherzer and Trey Turner over here, Trey Turner being the shortstop last year. So that works out there. But yeah, Will Smith, I think, a 6-7 year contract extension starting this year would benefit. You try to get that AAV around 15 to 18 million dollars if you can, 20 being the high bar, just in terms of, not that you don't want to pay Will Smith, but you're buying out 3 of his guaranteed years where he wouldn't probably make 18 to 20 million dollars. Maybe that last year he might, but I don't know how much he'll jump up in terms of the 5 mil next year. I would imagine he'll be in the 10 to 12 mil range. Maybe the year after that, the 15 to 16 million dollar range, and then after that, maybe up into the $20 million range, assuming he stays how he's been. So you give him 18 mil guaranteed for the next 8, 6, 7, 8 years, however long you want to give it to him, and that might be something that entices him. One thing with Will Smith that's a little bit different compared to some of the other guys we've had with the Dodgers before is his agent isn't Scott Boras, so maybe he would be open to an extension. He's a guy the Dodgers, he came up with the Dodgers. He's been one of the best catchers in baseball, and he's developed a rapport with the pitchers, and he's improving every year in terms of defensive value. And if even that would help even more if the robot umpires come, because he doesn't have to worry about framing as much, and then he can focus maybe more on the offense or whatever the case is. So all in all, this is to be said that Will Smith contract extension would look in the 5 to 7 year range for around $18 million a year. That would be something I would imagine would benefit everyone. Get Will Smith some guaranteed money. The Dodgers are able to get a couple extra years out of Will Smith once he's done with arbitration, and everyone can go home happy. But like I said, I don't think it's very likely right now. Maybe after this season, it would be a little bit more likely with only 2 years left, and then they have a little bit better idea of what his money's going to look like in terms of his last 2 years of arbitration, and then they can go from there. But if they wanted to extend him, that's kind of what it would look like. So. All right, so let's get into Miguel Vargas. One of the other questions in that athletic mailbag article with Fabian Ardaya asked basically what he said. What's the ceiling on Miguel Vargas? Superstar, perennial all-star, above average contributor. This guy says he's excited to see him get an extended run and think very highly of his potential, but I'm curious about how far I should place expectations. And yeah, this one is, Miguel Vargas is a little bit tough to judge, mainly in the fact that he doesn't have a defensive position yet, hasn't established himself at any defensive position. So he needs to hit in order to bring the value that he can bring to any team. And for someone that's just good at hitting and doesn't necessarily have a position, it might be a little bit tougher to get into that all-star range, just for the simple fact that you have to be really, 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 really good on offense in order to offset that. So, and this is not to say that Miguel Vargas can't be good at defense or can't find a defensive position. This is just based on what we've seen so far. He's had some struggles with errors at third base. He continuing to learn left field. Looked okay out there last year, nothing special, but we've seen guys get better at defense and outfield as time goes on. Kyle Schwarber looked like the competent left fielder last year when he was playing out there for the Phillies. So that's very possible still. And supposedly he's been working a lot at second base this offseason, which makes me feel like the Dodgers don't trust him so much at third base. They trust Max Muncy more to handle third base, and they're hoping Miguel Vargas can handle second base, because if he can, that's a big boost, because if you can have Miguel Vargas at second, Muncy at third, Lux at short, then that's defensively, you're probably not going to be the best defensive infield in baseball, but you'll have a pretty strong offensive infield, assuming Max Muncy gets back to second half in previous years, assuming Gavin Lux can play like he did the first part of the year last year before his injury, and assuming Miguel Vargas develops into the hitter that you believe he's going to develop into. More Miguel Vargas thoughts are on the way, but first, I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. Check out Locked On MLB Prospects with host Lindsey Crosby. He's going deep on the MLB stars of tomorrow. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. All right, back to Miguel Vargas. Yeah, so for him to be an all-star, like I said, he would have to have more of an established position, or at least somewhere he's playing on a very consistent, almost everyday basis. But if the kid can hit, the kid will be able to hit. And the thing with Vargas that we haven't necessarily seen from some of the guys that have come up the last few years is that he doesn't strike out as much as, for someone that hits as well as he does, he doesn't strike out as much. He's a little bit more of a pure hitter. I mean, he has in the minor leagues from 2018 to 2022, these are his batting averages: 330, 308, 319, 304. You're like, okay, batting average doesn't matter. These are his OPSs: 869, 820, 906, 915. That's pretty good. And then you look at, doubles: 38 doubles in 2019 in 124 games, 27 doubles in 2021 in 120 games, 32 doubles last year in 113 games in AAA. 17 homers last year, 16 stolen bases last year. Another part of that thing, kind of what I talked about with James Outman yesterday, is a little bit of a speed element. He's stole double-digit bags, and every year he's played over 100 games in the minor leagues. He stole 7 bags in 2018 with those just at 53 games. So he brings a little bit of that speed. We saw it last year when he got his first major league double, and then he stole third base. He has that speed element to him, which, like I said, with the new bases, with the new rules, that can help out. Maybe the Dodgers are going to be a little bit more aggressive. The whole baseball world might be a little bit more aggressive, but the Dodgers might be a little bit more aggressive. Then you look at the strikeouts. 491 at bats in 2019, 83 strikeouts. 483 at bats in 2021, 89 strikeouts. 438 at bats in 2022, 76 strikeouts. So he's striking out almost less than a quarter of the time, less than a quarter of the time for the most part. And every year he's been in the minors. Now, obviously, in the majors, a little bit different. In 47 at bats, he struck out 13 times last year. So still around a quarter of the time, which is not, could be worse. But if he can get that under, being more comfortable, then I believe, he'll be fine. And for the Dodgers, they don't need him to be a superstar. They don't need him to be an all-star. But if he is, that's more beneficial, obviously. But I'm high on Miguel Vargas. I think he's a kid. We've seen the work ethic. We've seen him build himself up. We've seen, even last year, coming through and sticking with the team and making the postseason roster. And, there's something to that the Dodgers were willing to put him on the postseason roster. There's something they saw. Now, obviously, Hans Alberto couldn't really hit, and Miguel Vargas brings you a little bit more of a ceiling, but still, he's a guy that the Dodgers are counting on. And he's, like I mentioned the other day, he's probably one of the most pivotal Dodgers this season, because if he doesn't hit, or if he struggles, that really dampens the Dodgers in terms of offense, because they're counting on him to be above average offensively. And if he's not, then they need someone else to either step up and become above average offensively. They need Gavin Lux to replicate what he did last year before he got hurt. They need Max Muncy to be Max Muncy of what he's been. They need Chris Taylor to rediscover himself. They need Outman and Trace Thompson or Jason Hayward or whoever's in the outfield to be good. And because they don't have Trey Turner at shortstop, they don't have another all-star in the lineup like they did last year. They don't necessarily have, they don't have they have a little bit, less margin for error than they do in past years. And Miguel Vargas being good would be one of those margins that they need to work out. So I'm confident in Miguel Vargas, and I believe he's going to hit. And if he can just add a little bit of value defensively, then the Dodgers are going to have no issues with what he brings to the team. So that's all my thoughts on Miguel Vargas. He also was named to the MLB top prospects list or from MLB Pipeline. He was named to the top 10 third base, I believe. Yeah, he was number 5. Third base is pretty stacked in terms of prospects right now. You got Gunnar Henderson, who's a Rookie of the Year candidate in the AL side. You got Brett Beatty, who's one of the top Mets prospects. You got Curtis Mead with the Rays, Josh Jung with the Rangers, and then Miguel Vargas with the Dodgers. Interesting that he's a top third base prospect, and he may not play third base too much this year. So we'll see. Wanted to finish off just looking at it's 2023 now, and it's interesting because like 2013, you count it as 10 years, so it's a 10-year anniversary. Even though this will be the 11th season since that, because you count, whatever, blah blah blah. The 2013 Dodgers are the Dodgers that kicked off this string of postseason appearances, and it's always fun to look back at old rosters and just say, man, that was the roster. And if you remember this Dodgers team, it was one that was not good for most of the early part of the season, and then went on that incredible run, 42-10, or whatever. I believe 42-10. They all get mixed up because they've had a lot of runs the last few years, and it's just fun to look back and you look at the names and then you try to remember the stories. And Hanley Ramirez, a 1.04 OPS, 345 batting average, 20 home runs, 25 doubles in 86 games. You remember he was hurt that year. And Yasiel Puig, that's the year he came up. That was his rookie year. He gets a lot of the credit for helping that Dodger turn around. And yeah, it does coincide with him coming up. And yes, he did have a really good year, 925 OPS, 19 home runs, 21 doubles. But Hanley Ramirez was also the reason the Dodgers went on that incredible run when he came back, and he was on fire, reminiscent of Manny Ramirez and him carrying the Dodgers, back in 2008, 2009. So, but you look at, the starting lineup: catcher AJ Ellis, Adrian Gonzalez at first, Mark Ellis at second, Hanley at short, Juan Uribe at third, the resurgent Juan Uribe after we didn't like him for so long. Carl Crawford played 116 games that year. I don't remember him ever playing that many games in a season for the Dodgers. Andre Ethier in center field, Yasiel Puig in right. And then off the bench, you had Skip Schumacher, Nick Punto, Jerry Hairston, Scott Van Slyke. Matt Kemp was injured that year. He only played in 73 games. And then the name I didn't remember is Michael Young. And Michael Young, it's one of those that you don't have the great memories of him as a Dodger. He was with the Rangers forever. He ended up coming to the Dodgers, and then was with the Phillies. And then the Dodgers got him from the Phillies in 2013. And it's one that you remember because he made 4 outs in one postseason game, and hit into 2 double plays, and against the Cardinals when the Dodgers lost in 6 games to the Cardinals that year. So yeah, not fun as much to remember him. But you had Kershaw, Greinke, Ryu topping out the rotation. Kershaw 1.83 ERA in 33 starts, 236 innings, just ridiculous. Zach Greinke at 2.63 ERA, 28 starts, 177 innings. Hyunjin Ryu almost threw 200 innings, 192 innings, 3 ERA. I mean, that was a ridiculous top three. And then you had guys like Ricky Nolasco who came over, and Ricky Nolasco I remember because he started the game that the Dodgers ended up clinching the division. He didn't pitch very well, but the Dodgers ended up coming back and winning that game, and that's when they jumped in the pool. And I always remember that game because I was at that game the night before the Dodgers had lost. They weren't able to clinch, if I'm not, or if they lost or that someone else won, they weren't able to clinch, whatever the case. I believe they lost. And I was at a bar in Torrance, and I told my cousin, "Hey, let's go to Arizona and watch the Dodgers clinch." And he said, "Yeah, I'm down. I have class tomorrow, but I can miss." And I called up to my other friend, or one of my other friends, and she brought her 2 sisters, I believe, and we left LA around 1 in the morning, and we got to Arizona around 7 and 8 in the morning. We took a quick nap at their grandparents' house, my friend's grandparents' house, and then we went to the game because it was a day game. Pretty empty day game. There was a lot of kids there because they take kids to day games uh, from schools and camps or whatever. And yeah, the Dodgers went down, came back. A couple of the home runs that were hit, we were sitting in left field in the bleachers. A couple of the home runs that were hit were kind of near us. And Dodgers won. They, celebrated. They celebrated, and if you can remember, that's when the Diamondbacks were asked the Dodgers not to celebrate on the field because they didn't want fans sticking around. So when the Dodgers won, all the fans went to the Dodgers dug outside and were trying to stay there, and the Diamondbacks people were asking everyone to leave. So me and my cousin went into the bathroom we had to use the bathroom, but also just to kind of wait it out, hang out, like not too long. But uh, and then when we came out, we saw the Dodgers running to the pool, like running to the outfield to jump into the pool. So we tried to start running that way, around the concourse. And there was some security guards that didn't allow us to, and they were, trying to get us out, not escorting us out, but basically told us, no, you can't do that. And this was before portable chargers, so my phone was dead. I don't have any. Not that it would have been great; it would have been a super grainy video, but I always have that memory of the 2013 Dodgers, and that's what kicked off this string of uh, playoff teams. This was, 1 year after the Guggenheim had taken over, after they had got the, Gonzalez and Beckett and all those guys in that trade, and they traded for Hanley Ramirez. They didn't quite get it done in 2012, but 2013 kicked it off, and that'll always be one of the fun Dodger teams. So that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen. Check out Locked On MLB Prospects for your second listen. Host Lindsey Crosby is a prospect encyclopedia, and he can be found wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube, which is how you can find us. You can also find us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff is on Twitter at Snider. I'm at Vince Samperio. DMs are open on all those accounts if you need to get a hold of us. You can also get a hold of us via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be with us. If you get in your car or sit on your couch, just tell your smart device play podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.